The end came faster than anyone expected. 2 years after the massacre at New Busan, High Counselor Morden sat alone in his private chambers on the council homeworld. Outside his window, he could see smoke rising from riots in the capital city. His own people were turning against him. The war had gone terribly wrong. What was supposed to be a quick lesson for uppity humans had become a galactic nightmare. 12 major alien species had withdrawn from the council. Entire sectors were in open rebellion. The economy was collapsing as more species refused to trade with the council government, and the humans just kept coming. "Sir," his aide announced nervously, "Admiral Vextar is here to see you." Morden barely recognized the former commander. Vextar had lost both arms and one eye in various human attacks. His scales were scarred from chemical weapons, and he walked with a heavy limp. "Report," Morden said wearily. "The 7th Fleet is gone," Vextar announced. "The humans destroyed our base at Kepler Station using some kind of new weapon that turned our own ship's engines into bombs. Casualties, 50,000 dead. No survivors." Morden closed his eyes. The humans had been getting more creative with their killing methods. They didn't just destroy council forces. They found ways to make the defeats as horrifying as possible, and the planet killer fleet, gone. The humans tracked down all 5 ships and destroyed them before they could reach human space. Apparently, their intelligence network is far more extensive than we realized. The intelligence network was Oh Da-eun's masterpiece. Her hackers had penetrated every major council computer system. They knew about military plans before some council generals did. More importantly, they had found the evidence that would finally end the war. On Earth, President Jiang was meeting with representatives from 37 alien species. These were the governments that had broken away from the council after learning the truth about decades of genocide and oppression. "We have enough evidence to prosecute every council leader for crimes against sapient beings," announced the Eldari representative. "The documentation is overwhelming." "Justice is important," President Jiang agreed. "But first we need to end this war. Too many people are dying every day it continues." Governor Taemin, now recovered from his injuries, spoke up from his seat at the table. "The council will never surrender as long as they think they can win. We need to show them that victory is impossible." That demonstration came in the form of Operation Nightfall. Admiral Shin had gathered the largest human fleet in history. Over 2,000 ships from every human world and space station. Their target was the Council's most important military stronghold, the fortress system of Drakmor. Drakmor was supposed to be impossible to attack. It had layered shields, automated defense platforms, and a garrison of 1 million soldiers. The Council had boasted that it could never fall. Human military engineers had been studying the problem for months. They couldn't break through the defenses by force, so they decided to bypass them entirely. The attack began with what appeared to be a standard fleet engagement. Admiral Shin's ships moved into position and began trading fire with the outer defenses, just like any normal battle. But hidden among the human ships were 50 vessels carrying Dr. Nam's latest invention, quantum phase bombs. These weapons could slip through shields by briefly existing in a parallel dimension. When the bombs detonated inside Drakmor's shield perimeter, they created a chain reaction that tore the entire fortress system apart. The shields collapsed, the defense platforms exploded, and the asteroid fortresses cracked open like eggs. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Council's greatest stronghold was nothing but floating debris and radiation. Admiral Shin's final message to the surviving Council forces was simple. "This is what happens when you murder children. Surrender now, or we'll do this to every world you control." The psychological effect was devastating. If Drakmor could fall in 4 hours, nowhere in Council space was safe. Alien populations began evacuating from major military worlds. Council soldiers started surrendering or deserting rather than face human forces. But Morden still refused to give up. In a final desperate gambit, he activated the Council's most secret weapon, a massive space station hidden in dark space between the galaxies. The station mounted a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems by triggering their suns to go supernova. "If we cannot rule the galaxy," he announced to his remaining allies, "then no one will rule it. We will destroy the human homeworld, and as many of their colonies as necessary to force their surrender." The station began moving toward human space. its doomsday weapon charging for the attack that would end billions of lives. It never had the chance to fire. Captain Kang Min-ho had died 2 years earlier, but his sacrifice had inspired thousands of other humans to follow his example. When human intelligence discovered the doomsday station, 300 volunteers immediately stepped forward for a suicide mission to destroy it. The attack was led by Colonel Park De-young, Captain Kang's former second-in-command. Her small fleet of 50 ships faced a massive battle station defended by the Council's elite guard. "Remember New Busan," she told her people as they began their final approach. "Remember the children." The battle was desperate and bloody. Human ships rammed through the station's defenses, exploding themselves against shield generators and weapon emplacements. Park's own ship made it to the station's reactor core before being destroyed by defensive fire, but she had done enough damage. The station's main weapon overloaded and exploded, taking the entire facility with it. The doomsday threat was ended, but at the cost of 300 human lives. When news of the station's destruction reached the Council homeworld, the remaining alien leaders finally understood the truth. Humans would never stop fighting. They would never surrender. They would pay any price, make any sacrifice to protect their people and punish those who harmed them. The final surrender came not from Morden, but from his own people. Hegemony security forces, horrified by their leader's willingness to commit galactic genocide, arrested him in his sleep. They delivered him to human forces along with a complete surrender of all Council military assets. The war was over. The trials took 3 years. Council leaders were prosecuted before a tribunal of 30 species for crimes against sapient beings. The evidence was overwhelming. Decades of genocide, slavery, and oppression justified by claims of galactic order. Morden's defense was simple. "We were maintaining civilization. These lesser species needed strong guidance." Governor Tae-min, now serving as the chief prosecutor, delivered the final argument. "Civilization isn't built by murdering children in their schools. It's built by people like Dr. Park So-young, who died protecting patients regardless of their species. It's built by teachers like Mr. Park, who spent his last moments comforting frightened children." The Council wasn't maintaining civilization, it was destroying it. The verdicts were unanimous. Most Council leaders received life sentences on prison worlds. Morden and the others directly responsible for the massacres were executed. A new galactic government was established, based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. Every species had an equal voice, and military intervention was banned except for mutual defense. Governor Tae-min became the first human ambassador to the new Galactic Federation. At his inauguration, he spoke before representatives of over 100 species. "We did not want this war. We wanted to be your friends, your partners in building something beautiful among the stars. When you forced us to become your enemies, we showed you what humans are capable of when pushed beyond all reason. Now we offer you the choice again, friendship or enmity. The decision is yours." The new government chose friendship. Trade resumed, scientific cooperation flourished, and mixed colonies like New Busan began appearing again throughout the galaxy. But the memory of the war remained. On worlds across the galaxy, alien parents told their children the story of the species that seemed gentle until their young were threatened. The story of the people who brought down the mightiest government in galactic history, when that government crossed the line. Admiral Shin, now retired, often visited the memorial garden on rebuilt New Busan. 200 small stones marked the children who had died there, including the little blue Altaran boy who just wanted to play with his friends. "Was it worth it?" asked a young reporter who was interviewing him for a documentary about the war. Shin was quiet for a long moment, looking at the memorial stones. "The children who died here will never grow up, never have families, never see the galaxy we built from the ashes of the war. Nothing can bring them back." He turned to face the reporter, but their sacrifice ensured that no other children would die the way they did. The galaxy learned an important lesson. Humans can be the best allies you never expected, or the worst enemies you never imagined. The choice is always yours. In the end, that was humanity's true victory. Not the destruction of their enemies, but the creation of a galaxy where children of all species could grow up safe, knowing that someone would always stand between them and those who would do them harm. The Council had crossed a line, and humanity had responded with unrelenting fury. But when the fury ended, They had built something better from the ruins of what came before, and the galaxy was never the same. The war began at exactly Oro 347 Earth Standard Time, when the Council fleet opened fire on Admiral Shin's outer defense platforms. They expected a quick victory against the smaller human force. Instead, they walked into hell. The platforms had been built to look like normal defense stations, but Dr. Nam's team had filled them with surprises. When the Council ships closed in for easy kills, the platforms exploded outward in all directions, sending millions of metal fragments tearing through alien hulls. Now, Admiral Shin whispered into his communicator. Throughout the solar system, hidden weapons came alive. Asteroid mining ships suddenly revealed massive railguns. Civilian freighters dropped their disguises and launched waves of nuclear missiles. Even the space elevators had been converted into giant mass drivers. The Battle of Sol lasted 18 hours. When it ended, 37 Council dreadnoughts were either destroyed or crippled. The human fleet had lost 12 ships, but the real war was just beginning. On the dark side of the moon, O-Da-Un was launching her cyber attack. Her virus slipped through Council networks like a ghost, copying files and planting backdoors. Within hours, she had access to classified military communications, troop movements, and something even more valuable, the truth about other Council atrocities. President Jiang needs to see this, she told her team, as data flowed across her screens. New Busan wasn't the first massacre. The Council has been doing this for decades. The files revealed a systematic pattern of genocide. Dozens of species had been eliminated or enslaved when they became inconvenient to Council interests. The peaceful Valdari had been wiped out for refusing to provide slave labor. The artistic Kithara had been destroyed because their culture was deemed corrupting. The list went on and on. Broadcast everything, Da-Yun ordered. Every world needs to see this. While Da-Un fought her information war, Captain Kang Min-ho was leading humanity's physical response. His special forces units had been inserted deep into Council space, through smuggling routes and diplomatic channels. Their first target was Rigel Station, a massive military depot that supplied the Council's eastern fleets. Kang's team of 50 soldiers faced a garrison of 5,000 aliens. Remember, he told his people as they prepared their assault, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to make them pay for New Busan. The attack began with suicide drones piloted by artificial intelligence. They crashed through the station's shields and detonated nuclear warheads in the ammunition storage areas. The explosions tore Rigel Station apart from the inside. When Council reinforcements arrived, they found only wreckage and a recorded message from Captain Kang. This is for the children you murdered. We're just getting started. Similar attacks erupted across Council space. Human special forces struck at supply depots, communication centers, and military academies. They didn't try to hold territory. They just destroyed everything valuable and disappeared. The psychological effect was devastating. Council forces began to fear that humans could be anywhere, could strike at any time. Alien soldiers started shooting at shadows. Meanwhile, General Lee Young-suk was preparing for larger operations. Intelligence from Da-Yun's cyber attacks had revealed that the surviving New Busan colonists were being held on a prison world called Korriban. Prime. It's a fortress world, her intelligence officer warned. 20,000 guards, orbital defense platforms, shield generators. A direct assault would cost thousands of lives. Then we don't assault it directly, Lee replied, studying the prison layout. We turn their own defenses against them. The rescue mission began with Da-Un's hackers taking control of the prison's computer systems. They disabled the guards' weapons, opened all the cell doors, and turned off the gravity in the guard barracks. While chaos erupted inside the prison, Lee's assault teams landed and fought their way to the human prisoners. They found Governor Tae-min barely alive, Choi Hye-jin sick from torture, and Communications Officer Jin Woo planning an escape that would never have worked. Are we too late? Lee asked Tae-min as her medics worked on him. Not too late, he whispered. Never too late for justice. The rescue of the New Busan survivors was broadcast live across the galaxy. Taemin's testimony about the massacre reached billions of alien civilians who had believed the Council's lies. They came to our world in peace, he said, his voice weak but clear. We welcomed them as friends. They repaid our hospitality by murdering our children and calling it justice. The broadcast caused riots on dozens of Council worlds. Alien species that had trusted the Council for centuries, began asking hard questions about their government's actions. On the Eldari homeworld, peaceful protesters filled the streets demanding answers about New Busan. On the industrial world of Vega Prime, workers went on strike rather than build weapons for a government that murdered children. High Counselor Morden watched his empire begin to crumble from within. "How are the humans doing this?" he demanded. "They have fewer ships, fewer soldiers, fewer resources. Why are we losing?" Commander Vextar, now missing his left arm from a human ambush, tried to explain. "They don't fight like civilized beings. They use tactics that violate every law of war, suicide attacks, cyber warfare, turning populations against their own governments. Then we respond in kind," Morden decided. "Deploy the planet-killer weapons. Threaten to destroy human worlds until they surrender." It was the worst decision the Council could have made. When news of the planet-killer threat reached Earth, President Yang called an emergency session of the human government. Every representative attended, either in person or by quantum communication. "They want to play with doomsday weapons," she announced. "Very well. Dr. Nam, report on Project Prometheus." Dr. Nam stood slowly. "We have 47 planet-killer devices hidden throughout Council space. Each one is targeted at a major alien world. If they destroy one human world, we can destroy 50 of theirs." The room was silent. Even the human leaders were shocked by the scope of their preparations for total war. "Are we really willing to commit genocide?" asked one representative. "They already committed genocide against us," President Jiang replied. "The question is whether we're willing to let them do it again." The vote was unanimous. Within days, Admiral Shin's fleets were moving against major Council strongholds. The Battle of Vega Prime became legendary. Human ships used the planet's own defense grid against the Council garrison, turning their shields into a trap that crushed them from all sides. At the Battle of the Neutral Zone, Captain Kang led a desperate assault against a Council fleet twice the size of his own. When his flagship was crippled, he rammed it directly into the Council command ship, destroying both vessels and killing himself in the process. His final transmission was heard across the galaxy. For New Busan, for the children, for humanity, the war had become total. There were no rules, no mercy, no limits. Humans fought with the fury of a species that had been pushed beyond all reason, while the Council fought with the desperation of a government watching its empire collapse. But the tide was turning. Every day brought new alien species withdrawing their support from the Council. Every battle showed that humans were willing to pay any price for victory. The Council had crossed a line when they murdered children. Now they were learning the cost of that decision, and humanity was just getting started. The recordings from New Busan spread through human space like wildfire. On Earth, President Jang Mi-kyung watched the footage in her office, surrounded by her advisors. The room was deadly quiet except for the sound of children screaming on the screen. "How many confirmed dead?" she asked softly. 800 colonists, reported Defense Secretary Kim. 200 children, 47 alien patients who had sought medical help, and the survivors, 200 taken as prisoners. The Council claims they're war criminals. President Jiang closed her eyes. She had been in politics for 30 years, had seen war and suffering, but this was different. These weren't soldiers or politicians. They were farmers, teachers, doctors, people who had never hurt anyone. "Madam President," said Foreign Minister Lee, "we should demand an investigation through proper diplomatic channels. File formal complaints with the Council's Justice Committee." "And how long will that take?" 2 to 3 years at minimum. On the screen, Dr. So-young was dying in the hospital doorway, still trying to protect her patients. President Jiang had met her once during a colony visit. She remembered a kind woman who spoke passionately about healing people regardless of their species. "They're claiming it was self-defense," continued the foreign minister. "That our colonists attacked first. Did they?" Defense Secretary Kim shook his head. "Our people had 20 light rifles against 3 dreadnoughts. It wasn't a battle, Madam President. It was an execution." That evening, President Jiang addressed the human worlds. Her speech was broadcast to every human colony, every space station, every ship in the void. "My fellow humans," she began. "Today we learned what the Galactic Council truly thinks of us. They see us not as equals, but as children to be controlled. When we resist, they kill our children to teach us obedience. On Mars, Admiral Shin Kyung-ho watched the speech from his office at Fleet Command. He was an old soldier who had fought in Earth's last wars before first contact with aliens. He had hoped those days were over. They want to know what monsters we can become, the president continued. They have forgotten that humanity climbed from caves to stars by being the most dangerous predator on our world. They mistake our desire for peace as weakness. On Luna Base, General Lee Young-suk was already mobilizing her special forces. She had trained soldiers for every possible conflict except this one, a war against the entire galactic government. For 15 years we have tried to be good galactic citizens, President Jung said. We have shared our knowledge, opened our worlds to refugees, offered medical aid to any species that needed it. This is how the Council repays our generosity. In the asteroid mining stations, corporate executive Bae-jin Ah was converting her factories from civilian production to military manufacturing. Her companies could build anything humans needed for war. The Council threatens other human colonies. They demand we accept their version of justice, the justice that murdered Dr. So Young for trying to heal the sick, the justice that poisoned children for the crime of going to school. Dr. Nam Woo-jin, head of Earth's Advanced Research Division, was already working on new weapons. Humanity had developed many technologies that could be turned toward war. The aliens were about to learn why humans were such effective killers. We offered them friendship. They chose to make us enemies. So be it. The president's final words echoed across human space. The Council wanted to see what we're capable of when pushed too far. They're about to find out. Within days, things began happening all across human territory. Admiral Shin called up reserve fleets that had been mothballed since the end of Earth's wars. General Lee activated sleeper cells that had been planted in alien space, just in case. Dr. Nam began field testing weapons that violated every galactic treaty humans had signed. On the dark web, a hacker named Oh Da-eun was building something unprecedented, a virus that could penetrate Council computer systems. She had been working on it for years as a theoretical exercise. Now it would become very real. We're not ready for a full war, Admiral Shin told the president during an emergency meeting. Our fleet is designed for defense, not conquest. The Council has thousands of worlds and millions of ships. Then we don't fight their kind of war, President Jang replied. We fight ours. Captain Kang Min-ho was already preparing for that kind of war. His Special Forces unit had been training for asymmetric warfare, fighting enemies who were bigger and stronger by being faster and more vicious. What about our civilians on other worlds? Asked the foreign minister. If we start a war, the Council will target them too. They're already targeting our civilians, the president replied coldly. At least now our people will know to fight back. The Council, meanwhile, was making its own preparations. High Counselor Morden, leader of the reptilian hegemony species, called an emergency session. The human response is more aggressive than we anticipated, he announced to the assembled alien leaders. They are mobilizing their entire military. Perhaps we should reconsider, suggested Counselor Zeth of the more peaceful Eldari. The images from New Busan are causing unrest on many worlds. Our own people are beginning to question our actions. Questioning is not permitted, Morden replied. The humans must learn their place. If they choose war, we will give them war. Commander Vextar, fresh from his victory at New Busan, was eager to continue. Humans are emotional and undisciplined. One decisive defeat will break their spirit. Exactly, agreed Morden. We will blockade their home system. When they see Earth threatened, they will surrender. But the aliens had made a fundamental error. They thought humans fought like other species, with honor, following rules, protecting their homeworld above all else. Humans fought to win. 3 days later, the Council fleet moved to blockade Earth. 50 dreadnoughts, the largest force ever assembled, surrounded humanity's birth world. It should have been overwhelming. Instead, it was a trap. Admiral Shin had been expecting this move. His defense fleet was outnumbered 10-1, but he wasn't planning to fight fair. Hidden throughout the solar system were automated weapons platforms, suicide drones, and mining ships converted to deliver nuclear payloads. When the Council fleet moved into position, they found themselves surrounded not by helpless planets, but by the most dangerous military trap in galactic history. This is High Counselor Morden, came the broadcast to Earth. You will surrender immediately and submit to Council justice, or we will destroy your homeworld. President Zhang's response was broadcast throughout the galaxy. This is President Zhang of Earth. If you fire one shot at our world, we will turn every planet you love into radioactive glass. If you try to blockade us, we will teach your own people to cut your throats. If you hunt us across the galaxy, we will become the nightmare that keeps your children awake at night. Choose wisely. The Council had expected humans to beg or surrender. Instead, they got a promise of mutual destruction delivered in a voice cold as space itself. They're bluffing, Vextar insisted. Humans are too civilized for total war. Morden wasn't so sure. The recordings from New Busan showed human soldiers fighting to protect children, even when they knew they would die. That wasn't civilized behavior, it was something much more dangerous. It was love. And love, when mixed with fury, created the most dangerous force in the universe. The war was about to begin, and the Council was about to learn why humanity had conquered an entire world full of predators before they ever reached the stars. The 72 hours passed too quickly. Most colonists had packed their belongings, but few had actually left. Where could they go? New Busan was their home. Governor Taimin spent the final hours sending desperate messages to Earth and other human colonies. The responses were all the same, sympathy but no help. Earth was too far away, and no human military ships were close enough to matter. When the deadline came, Commander Vextar didn't wait. 3 Council dreadnoughts moved into attack position above the colony. Smaller ships began landing troops around New Busan. All humans must report to the central square for transport, announced Vextar's voice from speakers throughout the colony. Anyone found in unauthorized areas will be treated as a hostile combatant. In the hospital, Dr. Park So-young refused to abandon her patients. She had 12 aliens under her care, including the little blue Alteran boy with the broken arm. They couldn't be moved safely. "Doctor, you have to go," urged her assistant, a young human nurse named Lee. "I won't leave them," So-young said firmly. "They came here because they trusted us to help them. I won't break that trust now." Kim Dong-woo gathered the colony's small defense force, 20 volunteers with basic training and light weapons. They had never expected to fight anyone. New Busan had been peaceful for 15 years. "We can't win against Council forces," Dong-woo told his people. "But maybe we can protect the civilians long enough for them to evacuate properly." "What about the children?" asked one of his officers. "The school is the strongest building. We'll make our stand there." In the agricultural facility, Choi Hye-jin watched Council soldiers march through her life's work. They were destroying plants that could save thousands of lives, keeping only the ones they wanted for military use. 15 years, she whispered to herself. 15 years of work. A Council soldier pointed his weapon at her. "Move along, human. This area is restricted." The evacuation began badly and got worse. Council forces herded colonists like animals, separating families and loading them onto transport ships without checking where they were going. Mrs. Han, the elderly first settler, collapsed during the march to the transport area. When her grandson tried to help her, a Council soldier struck him with the butt of his weapon. "Move faster," the soldier ordered. "She's old and sick," the boy pleaded. "She needs help." Then she should have left earlier. In the school, 200 children huddled together while their teachers tried to keep them calm. The building shook as Council dropships landed nearby. "It's going to be okay," Mr. Park told his students. "We're just going on a trip." But the children weren't stupid. They could see the fear in their teachers' eyes. The first shots were fired when Council troops tried to enter the hospital. Dr. So-young stood in the doorway, blocking their path. "These patients cannot be moved," she said. "They're too sick. Moving them will kill them." "That's not our problem," replied the squad leader, a tall insectoid creature from the mantis species. "It is mine. I'm their doctor. You're in violation of evacuation orders. Stand aside." "No." The squad leader raised his weapon. So-young didn't move. From across the square, Kim Dong-woo saw what was happening. "All units, defensive positions," he shouted into his radio. "Protect the hospital." His small defense force opened fire on the Council troops. They managed to drive back the first assault, but more soldiers were coming. The battle for New Busan lasted 6 hours. The human defenders fought bravely, but they were completely outnumbered and outgunned. Dongwoo's forces were quickly overwhelmed. When the shooting stopped, Council forces moved through the colony systematically. They found Dr. So-young still standing in the hospital doorway. She had been shot 3 times but was still alive. "Still trying to protect her patients, please." she whispered to the council commander. Don't hurt them. They're just sick people. They never did anything wrong. The commander looked at her with cold eyes. You should have followed orders. They shot her where she stood, then entered the hospital. All 47 patients were executed in their beds, including the little blue Alteran boy who just wanted to play with his friends. At the school, council forces surrounded the building. The children inside were crying, calling for their parents. Attention, humans, announced a council officer. You are harboring military combatants. Surrender them immediately or face the consequences. There are no soldiers here, Mr. Park called back. Only children and teachers. Our scanners show weapons in the building. Just emergency equipment. Nothing military. You have 5 minutes to surrender all combatants, but there were no combatants to surrender. The council forces had already decided what they were going to do. When the 5 minutes ended, they used chemical weapons. The gas was supposed to be non-lethal, just to force people out of the building, but the council forces had mixed the chemicals wrong, or maybe they had done it on purpose. 200 children died in the school that day. Their teachers died beside them, trying to protect them until the end. Governor Taemin was forced to watch it all. Council forces had captured him early in the battle and made him observe as they destroyed his colony. They wanted him to see what happened to humans who didn't follow council orders. This is what resistance brings, Commander Vexitar told him. Your people chose to fight instead of leaving peacefully. Their deaths are your fault. They were children, Taemin whispered. They were future problems. Now they're not. Of the 800 colonists, only 200 survived the massacre. These survivors were loaded onto prison transports as enemy combatants. Among them were Taemin, Hyejin, and communications officer Jinwoo. Before he was captured, Jinwoo had managed to launch an automated probe carrying recordings of everything that had happened. It was small enough to avoid detection and fast enough to reach the nearest hyperspace relay. The probe carried images of children dying in the school. It had recordings of Dr. So Young's murder and the execution of patients in their hospital beds. It showed council soldiers laughing as they destroyed 15 years of peaceful human civilization. These recordings reached Earth just as Ambassador Han Subin was giving a speech to the Galactic Council about expanding human-alien cooperation. She was talking about friendship and mutual respect when the images appeared on her personal communicator. The blood drained from her face as she watched children choking on poison gas. She saw the little blue Alteran boy she had met during her last visit to New Busan, now lying dead in his hospital bed. Ambassador Han, asked the council speaker, is there a problem? She looked up at the assembled aliens, the same species that had just slaughtered innocent children. Her voice shook as she spoke. We need to recess this session immediately. Why? We were discussing increased human participation in council activities. Han Subin stood slowly, her hands clenched into fists. Because 800 humans are dead. Because you murdered children. Because everything has changed. Within hours, the recordings from New Busan were being broadcast across human space. Earth's government tried to suppress them at first, hoping diplomacy could still work. But the images were too horrible to hide. When people saw their children dead in alien hands, something primal awakened in the human heart. Something dark and angry that had been sleeping since humanity first reached for the stars. The council, meanwhile, released their own version of events. They claimed the colonists had been armed terrorists who attacked first. They said the chemicals had been released accidentally during the fighting. They banned all independent investigation of the incident, but the probe's recordings told the real story. And now every human in the galaxy had seen it. The line had been crossed. There was no going back. The morning sun rose over New Busan like it had for the past 15 years. Governor Lee Taemin stood on his office balcony, watching children run through the gardens below. Their laughter mixed with the sounds of alien birds that had made the colony their home. Taemin smiled. This was what he had dreamed of when Earth first made contact with the stars. Humans and aliens working together, building something beautiful. Governor, the morning reports are ready, said Yoon Jinwoo, stepping onto the balcony. The young communications officer carried a tablet filled with the day's updates. How are the crops looking? Taemin asked. Better than ever. Choi Hae-jin says the new medical plants will be ready for harvest in 2 weeks. The Galactic Council's medical ships are already placing orders. Taemin nodded. The colony's special plants could cure diseases that killed millions across the galaxy. It made him proud that humanity could help so many different species. Down in the medical center, Dr. Park So-young was finishing her rounds. The hospital treated everyone, humans, aliens, even refugees from wars and distant systems. She believed medicine had no borders. "Dr. Park," called a young voice. A small blue-skinned child from the Alteran species ran up to her. His arm had been broken in an accident last week. "How are you feeling, little one?" So-young asked in simple Alteran words. "Much better." "Can I go play with the human children today?" "Of course. Just be careful." So-young watched him run off to join a group of human and alien children playing together. This was why she had left her comfortable job on Earth. Here, differences didn't matter. Only helping people mattered. At the colony's defense post, Kim Dong-woo was running his daily security checks. The former Earth military officer had been worried lately. Reports from other human colonies spoke of increased council inspections and new regulations. "Sir, we have incoming ships," reported his assistant. Dong-woo looked at the scanner. 3 large ships were dropping out of hyperspace. Council military vessels. His stomach dropped. "Send word to the governor immediately." Within an hour, the council inspection team had landed. Commander Vextar of the hegemony species led them. He was tall and reptilian, with cold yellow eyes that seemed to judge everything they saw. Tae-min met them at the spaceport with his usual diplomatic smile. "Welcome to New Busan, Commander. How can we help you today?" Vextar didn't return the smile. "This is not a social visit, Governor. We are here on official council business." They toured the colony together. Tae-min proudly showed off the schools where human and alien children learned together. He pointed out the hospital where So-young treated patients from 12 different species. He explained how the agricultural domes produced medicines that saved lives across the galaxy. Vextar showed no interest in any of it. Finally, they reached the main agricultural facility. Choi Hee-jin, the colony's agricultural director, was tending to rows of glowing purple plants. These were the medical plants that made New Busan special. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Tae-min said. "These plants can cure the red fever that has been killing so many people in the outer systems." Vextar walked between the rows, his clawed hands touching the plants. "Yes, very valuable. We are happy to increase production if the council needs more medicine," Hyejin offered. The commander turned to face them. "You misunderstand. By order of the Galactic Council, these plants are now classified as strategic military resources. This entire facility will be converted to military use." The humans stared at him in shock. "I don't understand," Tae-min said slowly. "These are medical plants. They save lives. They will save the lives of council soldiers. That is what matters. But what about the civilians who need them? The children dying from disease in the refugee camps?" Vextar's eyes grew colder. "Not our concern. You have 72 hours to evacuate this colony. Council forces will take control of all facilities." "Evacuate." Hee-jin stepped forward. "This is our home. We've lived here for 15 years. We've built schools, hospitals, families. Your families should have thought of that before settling on a world with strategic resources." Tae-min felt his diplomatic training kick in. "Commander, surely we can reach some agreement. We're happy to share the plants with the council. We can increase production, provide them free of charge for military use while still treating civilians. There is no agreement to be made. You have 72 hours. Any humans remaining after that time will be considered enemy combatants and treated accordingly." That evening, Tae-min called an emergency colony meeting. 800 colonists packed into the main hall. Families sat together, confused and scared. "They can't just take our home," said Mrs. Han, an elderly woman who had been one of the first settlers. "We have rights under galactic law." "We've done nothing wrong," added Mr. Park, a teacher at the colony school. "We've helped everyone who came here. We've never caused any problems." Dong-woo stood up. "I've been checking our legal options. The Council's authority over strategic resources is absolute under current galactic law. So we just give up?" asked Dr. So-young. "What about my patients? There are aliens here who fled wars, who came here because we help everyone regardless of species. If we leave, they'll die. And the children," added another voice. "Where will they go? This is the only home they've ever known." Tae-min looked out at the faces of his people. These weren't soldiers or politicians. They were farmers, teachers, doctors, engineers, people who had come to the stars to build something good. "We'll request more time," he said finally. I'll contact Earth, ask them to negotiate with the Council. Maybe we can find another solution. But even as he spoke, Taemin could see the doubt in their eyes. Deep down, they all knew the truth. The Council had made their decision. They didn't care about human rights or civilian lives. They only cared about power. Outside, the Council ships waited in orbit like dark clouds. Inside those ships, Commander Vextar was already making his own plans. He had dealt with stubborn colonies before. If these humans wouldn't leave peacefully, he would make them leave. The next morning dawned gray and cloudy. For the first time in 15 years, the children of New Busan weren't laughing in the gardens. They huddled close to their parents, sensing that something terrible was coming. Taemin stood on his balcony again, but this time he wasn't smiling. He was sending messages to Earth, pleading for help. But he knew Earth was far away and the Council was right here. The countdown had begun. In less than 3 days, everything they had built would be gone.